The train rattled across the plains, carrying with it more than weary passengers and creaking trunks. It carried fate, trembling inside the heart of a young woman named Clara Whitmore. Her hands twisted in her lap, knuckles white as she clutched the single letter that had changed her life forever. It was not addressed to her, it was meant for her sister, Lillian. But Lillian wasn't on the train. Clara was. Lillian had been promised as a mail-order bride to a Montana rancher named Samuel Holt, a man described as steady, hard-working, and lonely since his parents passed. But when the time came, Lillian had broken down in tears, confessing she couldn't bear to leave their aging mother behind. Clara, the quieter, overlooked sister, had made a choice in that moment. She packed her sister's trunk, kissed her mother's cheek, and stepped aboard the train instead. No one had tried to stop her, not even Lillian, who whispered through her sobs, "You're stronger than me, Clara. Maybe this is your chance to matter." As the train slowed into the dusty station, Clara's heart hammered. She knew Samuel Holt expected Lillian, golden-haired, lively, quick with laughter. Clara was none of those things. Her hair was brown, her dresses plain, her voice soft. She was used to being the shadow in every room, the helper, the listener. But now she was about to face a man who thought he was meeting her sister. The platform came into view. There he was, tall, broad-shouldered, his hat tilted against the sun, eyes scanning the passengers with quiet expectancy. He held a bouquet of wildflowers, clumsy in his large hands, yet tender. Clara's throat tightened. She wanted to turn back, to run, to hide. But her boots carried her forward, one trembling step at a time. "Lillian?" he asked, his deep voice uncertain, his eyes soft as they landed on her. Clara swallowed hard. I'm Clara, Lillian's sister." She braced for anger, rejection, maybe even humiliation. But Samuel just stood still, his brows furrowing, his hand lowering slowly with the flowers. For a moment, silence stretched between them. The station bustled with strangers passing by, but Clara felt the weight of his gaze press down on her like a truth she could not escape. Finally, Samuel spoke, steady and calm. "Then you've come all this way, Clara. Let's get you home. The word home startled her. She hadn't expected it to sound so gentle. The Holt ranch sprawled across the valley like a kingdom of open skies and golden fields. Clara had never seen such vastness. The farmhouse was sturdy but worn, its porch sagging slightly, its paint faded. Samuel moved with quiet purpose, carrying her trunk inside, setting it down as though it weighed nothing. He wasn't a man of many words, but when he did speak, his tone was steady, grounded, like the earth itself. Over the next days, Clara tried to keep busy, cooking, cleaning, tending the chickens. She wasn't sure what Samuel expected of her. He had not spoken of marriage since her arrival. Instead, he treated her as though she truly belonged, asking her opinion about the garden, leaving her space when she seemed nervous. At night, she lay awake in the small guest room, wondering how long this fragile arrangement could last before the truth crushed them both. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the horizon in fire, Samuel leaned against the porch rail beside her. "You're not like your sister," he said quietly. Her heart stuttered. She looked down, ashamed. "I know. I'm sorry, Samuel. I shouldn't have come. You expected someone else. Someone better." He turned to face her fully, his eyes steady on hers. "I didn't say that. I said you're not like her. That's not a bad thing." The words struck her harder than any scolding could have. She felt tears burn at the edges of her eyes but forced them back. No one had ever spoken as though her differences weren't flaws. For the first time, she wondered if perhaps her worth wasn't measured against her sister at all. Still, the weight of deception gnawed at her. Clara hadn't told him the full truth, that she hadn't just come in her sister's place, but that Lillian had never intended to follow. The guilt pressed heavier each day, until finally it broke open one stormy night. Rain lashed the windows, wind howled through the eaves, and Clara found Samuel in the barn, securing the doors against the storm. The sight of him, soaked and steady, pushed the confession from her lips. "I have to tell you," she blurted, voice trembling over the roar of rain. "Lillian never meant to come. I took her place, not because I thought I deserved it, but because she couldn't leave our mother. I didn't want to deceive you, Samuel. I'm sorry. If you want me to leave, I will." She braced for his anger, his disappointment. Instead, Samuel stepped closer, rain dripping from his hat brim, his eyes fierce and unyielding. "Clara," he said firmly, "you came. You chose to. That matters more than anything. You're here, working, trying, giving. You didn't take her place, you made your own." Her breath caught. The storm outside raged, but inside her chest, something broke open and bloomed all at once. For the first time, she felt truly seen, not as Lillian's shadow, but as herself. From that night forward, something shifted between them. Samuel began to ask her to ride with him across the pastures, showing her the land, teaching her how to guide the cattle, how to mend a fence. Clara's laughter, rare and tentative, began to surface. She discovered she loved the rhythm of the ranch, the honesty of hard work, the peace of wide skies. Samuel's quiet strength became a steady anchor, and in return, Clara's gentle warmth began to soften the edges of his solitude. One evening, weeks later, Clara found herself at the kitchen table, sewing a tear in Samuel's shirt. The lamp cast a golden glow over the room. Samuel watched her hands move, his gaze thoughtful. "You've filled this house with something it's been missing for a long time," he said quietly. Clara looked up, startled. "What's that?" "Life," he said simply. "Hope." Tears pricked her eyes. She lowered her head, unable to speak. But fate wasn't finished testing them. One afternoon, a letter arrived, bearing Lillian's handwriting. Clara's hands shook as she opened it. Lillian wrote of regret, of longing, of wishing she had gone after all. She asked if Samuel would still consider her, if Clara might return home. Clara's chest constricted. She knew her sister's charm, her beauty. If Samuel had longed for her all this time, Clara could never compete. That night, she left the letter on the table for him, her heart heavy. Samuel found her outside, staring at the stars. He held the letter in his hand, his expression unreadable. "Clara," he said slowly, "is this what you've been afraid of? That I'd send for her? That I'd wish you were someone else?" She couldn't answer. The fear in her chest was too great. Samuel stepped closer, his voice low but steady. "I didn't choose your sister, Clara. I chose you, the moment you stepped off that train with fear in your eyes and courage in your heart. I chose the woman who worked beside me, who cared, who gave without asking. Don't ever doubt that." The letter slipped from his hand, carried away by the wind. Clara turned to him, tears streaming freely now. For the first time in her life, she felt chosen, not as a substitute, not as a shadow, but as herself. Seasons turned on the ranch. Clara and Samuel built their life together, not in grand declarations, but in the quiet constancy of shared work, laughter, and trust. Clara planted a garden that bloomed wildly each spring. Samuel built her a swing on the porch, where she would sit in the evenings, her heart finally at rest. Years later, when neighbors spoke of them, they didn't say Samuel had taken a mail-order bride. They said Samuel had found the one woman strong enough to stand by his side, and kind enough to heal his heart. And Clara, once the overlooked sister, had become the heart of the Holt ranch, chosen forever not by chance, but by love. Days on the Holt ranch began to settle into a rhythm that Clara hadn't expected. The vast Montana skies stretched endlessly, and the golden fields seemed to absorb her fears, if only for a moment. Samuel showed her how to mend fences, check on the cattle, and tend a garden. Every task was grueling, yet in the quiet of hard work, Clara felt a strange sense of belonging. Still, the weight of her secret pressed on her chest like a stone. She had come in her sister's place, and while Samuel treated her with respect, she could see the subtle expectation in his eyes, a hope for Lillian, the golden-haired, lively woman he had imagined. Clara felt undeserving of his kindness, unsure how long it would last. One evening, a storm rolled across the horizon, dark clouds swallowing the sun. Wind whipped through the trees, and a distant rumble of thunder echoed across the valley. Clara watched from the porch as Samuel worked in the barn, securing doors and latches against the incoming tempest. The sight of him, moving steadily despite the rain, stirred something in her, admiration, fear, and longing all tangled together. Finally, unable to bear the silence any longer, Clara approached him. Rain soaked her hair and clung to her dress, but she didn't care. "I have to tell you something," she blurted, her voice almost drowned by the wind. Samuel paused, turning toward her, the storm reflecting in his eyes. "What is it?" I wasn't supposed to come," Clara admitted, shivering. "This was meant for my sister. She couldn't leave our mother behind. I took her place. I didn't want to deceive you, Samuel, but I did. I'm sorry. If you want me to leave, I will." Samuel stood silent for a moment, rain dripping from his hat, his expression unreadable. Then he stepped closer, and the wind seemed to die down just enough for her to hear his words clearly. "Clara," he said steadily, "you came. You chose to. That matters more than anything. You didn't take her place, you made your own." Tears welled in her eyes, blurring the sight of his strong, weathered face. No one had ever seen her like that, seen her courage, her determination, her heart. For the first time, she felt the fragile bud of hope bloom within her chest. From that night on, the dynamic between them shifted. Samuel began to invite her to ride with him across the pastures, teaching her the secrets of ranch life. Clara found herself laughing more, discovering a joy she hadn't known she could feel. The ranch, with its wide open spaces and honest work, became a place where she could breathe freely, where her past fears seemed smaller with every sunrise. One evening, while repairing a fence together, Samuel looked at her with an intensity that made her heart leap. "You're doing more than just keeping this place running, Clara," he said softly. "You're giving it life again." Clara's hands stilled. "Me. I'm just trying to fit in." "No," he said firmly. "You're more than that. You're here, and you're part of this. And I see you." The words struck her like a gentle but powerful force. For the first time, Clara didn't feel like a replacement. She felt chosen, noticed, valued, not for what she was expected to be, but for who she truly was. Yet, even with this fragile sense of belonging, a shadow lingered. Clara knew the truth about her sister and worried about the day Samuel might receive a letter from Lillian, longing for the life Clara had stepped into. How would he react then? Would he see Clara as the woman he had chosen, or merely as a substitute waiting to